Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. 30 April, 1 May, year of the Depend adult undergarment. The sky of USA's desert was clouded with blue stars. Now it was deep at night. Only above the USA city was the sky blank of stars. Its color was pearly and blank. Marath shrugged. Perhaps in you is the sense that citizens of Canada are not involved in the real root of the threat. Steeply shook the head in seeming annoyance. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. The lurid wig of him slipped when he moved the head with any abrupt force. The first way Marath betrayed anything of emotion was to smooth rather too fussily at the blanket on his lap. It is meaning that it will not, of finality, be Québécois making this kick to l'âme d'État uni. Look, the facts of the situation speak loudly. What is known? This is a USA production, this entertainment cartridge, made by an American man in the USA. The appetite for the appeal of it. This is also USA. The USA drive for spectation, which your culture teaches. This, I was saying, this is why choosing is everything. When I say to you, choose with great care and loving, and you make ridicule, it is why I look and say, can I believe this man is saying this thing of ridicule? Marath leaned slightly forward on his stumps, leaving the machine pistol to use both his hands and saying. Steeply could tell this was important to Marath. He really believed it. Marath made small, emphatic circles and cuts in the air while he spoke. These facts of situation, which speak so loudly of your rigorous fear of this samzidat, now is what happened when the people choose nothing over themselves to love each one. A USA that would die, and let its children die, each one, for the so-called perfect entertainment, this film. Who would die for this chance to be fed this death of pleasure with spoons in their warm homes, alone, unmoving? You, Steeply, in complete seriousness, as a citizen of your neighbor, I say to you, forget for a moment the entertainment and think instead about a USA where such a thing could be possible enough for your office to fear. Can such a USA hope to survive for a much longer time? To survive as a nation of peoples? To much less exercise dominion over other nations of other peoples? If these are other peoples who still know what it is to choose? Who will die for something larger, who will sacrifice the warm home, the woman at home, their legs, their life even, for something more than their own wishes of sentiment? Who will choose not to die for pleasure alone? Steeply removed with cool deliberation another Belgian cigarette and lit it. This time on the first match, waving the match out with a circular flourish and snap. All this took time of silence. Marath settled back. Marath wondered why the presence of Americans could always make him feel vaguely ashamed after saying things he believed. An aftertaste of shame after revealing passion of any belief and type, when with Americans as if he had made flatulence instead of had revealed belief. Steeply rested his one elbow on the forearm of the other arm, across his prostheses, to smoke like a woman. You're saying that the administration wouldn't even be concerned about the entertainment if we didn't know we were fatally weak, as a nation. You're saying the fact that we're worried speaks volumes about the nation itself. Marath shrugged. Us, we will force nothing on USA persons in their warm homes. We will make only available entertainment. There will be then some choosing to partake or choose not to. smoothing slightly his lap's blanket. How will our USAs choose? Who has taught them to choose with care? How will your offices and agencies protect them, your people? By laws? By killing Quebecois? Marat rose, but very slightly. As you were killing Colombians and Bolivians to protect USA citizens who desire their narcotics? How well did this work for your agencies and offices, the killing? How long was it before the Brazilians replaced the dead of Colombia? Steepley's wig had slipped hard to starboard. Remy, no. Drug dealers don't want you dead necessarily. They just want your money. There's a difference. You people seem to want us dead. Not just the concavity redemised, not just secession for Quebec. The FLQ, maybe they're like the Bolivians, but Fortier wants us dead. Again, you pass over what is important. Why BSS cannot understand us? You cannot kill what is already dead. Just you wait and see if we're dead, paisano. Marat made a gesture as if striking his own head. Again, passing over the important. This appetite to choose death by pleasure, if it is available to choose, this appetite of your people unable to choose appetites, this is the death. What you call the death, the collapsing, this will be the formality only. Do you not see? This was the genius of Guillaume Duplessis. What Monsieur Duplessis taught the cells, even if FLQ and Lesfield did not understand, much less the Albertans or crazy inside their head. We of the FAR, we understand. This is why this cell of Quebecers, that danger of entertainment, understand. So fine it will kill the viewer. If so, the exact way does not matter. The exact time of death and way of death, this no longer matters. Not for your peoples. You wish to protect them, but you can only delay, not save. The entertainment exists. The attachés and gendarmes of the Razo incident, more proof. It is there, existing. The choice for death of the head by pleasure now exists, and your authorities know, or you would not be now trying to stop the pleasure. Your son's Chris Jantel was in this one part correct. Someone is to blame. That has nothing to do with the reconfiguration. The reconfiguration was self-preservation. That, forget it. There is the villain. He saw you needed, all of you, to delay this splitting apart, to keep you together, the hating some other. Gentle is crazy in his head, but in this fault of someone, he was correct in saying it. En ennemi commun, but not someone outside you, this enemy, someone or some people among your own history sometimes kill your USA nation already, Hugh. Someone who had authority or should have had authority and did not exercise authority. I do not know, but someone sometime let you forget how to choose and what. Someone let your peoples forget it was the only thing of importance, choosing. So completely forgetting. When I say choose to you, you make expressions with your face such as, here we are going. Someone taught that temples are for fanatics only, and took away the temples and promised there was no need for temples. And now, there is no shelter, and no map for finding the shelter of a temple, and you will stumble about in the darkness confusion of permissions. The without end pursuit of a happiness of which someone let you forget the old things which make happiness possible. How is it, you say? Anything is going? And this is why we shudder at what a separate Quebec would be like. Choose what we tell you. Neglect your own wish and desires. Sacrifice for Quebec, for the state. Marat shrugged. Le tech porte-tour. Steeply said, "Does this sound a little familiar, Remy? The National Socialist Neo-Fascist state of separate Quebec? You guys are worse than the worst Albertans. Totalitarity. Cuba with snow. Ski immediately to your nearest re-education camp for instructions on choosing. Moral eugenics, China, Cambodia, Chad. Unfree. Unhappy? There are no choices without personal freedom, buckaroo. It's not us who are dead inside. These things you find so weak and contemptible in us. These are just the hazards of being free." But what does this USA expression want to mean, this buckaroo? Steeply turned to face away into the space they were above. "And now here we go. Now you will say how free are we if you dangle fatal fruit before us and we cannot help ourselves from temptation. And we say human to you. We say that one cannot be human without freedom." Marath's chair squeaked slightly as his weight shifted. "Always with you this freedom from your walled-up country, always to shout freedom, freedom, as if it were obvious to all people what it wants to mean, this word. But look, it is not so simple as that. Your freedom is the freedom from. No one tells you, your precious individual USA selves, what they must do. It is this freedom only, this freedom from constraint and forced duress." Marath, over Steeply's shoulder, suddenly could realize why the skies above the coruscating city were themselves erased of stars. It was the fumes from the exhaust wastes of the moving auto's pretty lights that rose and hid stars from the city, and made the city Tucson's loom nacreous in the dome's blankness of it. But what of the freedom to? Not just freedom from. Not all compulsion comes from without. You pretend you do not see this. What of freedom to? How for the person to freely choose. How to choose but any but a child's greedy choices if there is no loving field father to guide, inform, teach the person how to choose. How is this freedom to choose if one does not learn how to choose? Steeply threw away his cigarette and faced partly Marath from the edge. "Now the story of the rich man," Marath said. "The rich father who can afford the cost of candy as well as food for his children. But if he cries out freedom and allows his child to choose only what is sweet, eating only candy, not pea soup and bread and eggs, so his child becomes weak and sick. Is the rich man who cries freedom the good father?" Steeply made 4 small noises. Excitement of some belief made the American's electrolysis' little pimples of rash redden even in the milky dilute light of loom and low stars. The moon over the mountains of Rincon was on its side. Its color, the color of a fat man's face. Marath could believe he could hear some young USA voices shouting and laughing in a young gathering somewhere out on the desert floor below, but saw no headlights or young persons. Steeply stamped a high heel in frustration. Steeply said, "But U.S. citizens aren't presumed by us to be children, to paternalistically do their thinking and choosing for them. Human beings are not children." Marath pretended again to sniff. "Ah, yes, but then you say no?" Steeply said, "No. You say not children. You say, what is the difference, please, if you make a recorded pleasure so entertaining and diverting it is lethal to persons? You find a copy-capable copy and copy it and disseminate it for us to choose to see or turn off. And if we cannot choose to resist it, the pleasure, and cannot choose instead to live, what you say about your Fortier believes that we are children, not human adults like the noble kiddies. We are children, bullies but still children inside, and will kill ourselves for you if you put the candy within the arm's reach. Marath tried to make his face expressive of anger, which was difficult for him. This is what happens. You imagine the things I will say, and then say them for me, and then become angry with them. Without my mouth, it never opens. You speak to yourself. Inventing side. This itself is the habit of children. Lazy, lonely self. I am not even here possibly for listening to. Unmentioned by either man was how, in heaven's name, either man expected to get up or down from the mountainside shelf in the dark of the U.S. desert night. 8 November, year of the adult undergarment, Interdependence Day, Gaudiamus Igitur. Every year at ETA, maybe a dozen of the kids between maybe like 12 and 15, children in the very earliest stages of puberty and really abstract capable thought, when one's allergy to the confining realities of the present is just starting to emerge as weird kind of nostalgia for stuff you never even knew. Maybe a dozen of these kids, mostly male, get fanatically devoted to a homemade academy game called Eschaton. Eschaton is the most complicated children's game anybody around ETA ever heard of. No one's entirely sure who brought it to Enfield from where, but you can pretty easily date its conception from the mechanics of the game itself. Its basic structure had already pretty much coalesced when Alston's Michael Pemulus hit age 12 and helped make it way more compelling. Its elegant complexity, combined with a dismissive reenactment frisson, and a complete disassociation from the realities of the present, composes most of its puerile appeal. Plus, it's almost addictively compelling and shocks the tall. This year, it's been Otis P. Lord, a 13-year-old baseliner and calculus phenom from Wilmington, Delaware, who wears the beanie as Eschaton's game master and statistician of record, though Pemulus, since he's still around and is far and away the greatest Eschaton player in ETA history, has a kind of unofficial emeritus power of correction over Lord's calculations and mandate. Eschaton takes 8 to 12 people to play, with 400 tennis balls so dead and bald they can't even be used for service drills anymore, plus an open expanse equal to the area of 4 contiguous tennis courts, plus a head for data retrieval and coldly logical cognition, along with at least 40 megabytes of available RAM and wide array of tennis paraphernalia. The Vada Mekumish rulebook that Pemulus in YPW Halencandenza to write, with appendices and sample, pink MathPack NStat path decision tree diagrams, and an offset of the most accessible essay Pemulus could find on applied game theory, is about as long and interesting as J. Bunyan's stupefying Pilgrim's Progress from this world to that which is to come, and a pretty tough nut to compress into anything lively, although every year a dozen more ETA kids memorize the thing at such a fanatical depth that they sometimes report reciting mumbled passages under light dental or cosmetic anesthesia years later. But if Hal had a Luger pointed at him and were under compulsion to try, he'd probably start by explaining that each of the 400 dead tennis balls in the game's global arsenal represents a 5-megaton thermonuclear warhead. Of the total number of a given day's players, 3 compose a theoretical Anschluss, designated AMNAT, another 3 SOVWAR, 1 or 2 REDCHI, another 1 or 2 the wacko but always pesky LIBSYR, or the more formidable IRLIBSYR. and that the day's remaining players, depending on involved random considerations, can form anything from SOUTHAF to INDPAK to like an independent cell of NUC insurgents with a 50-click howitzer and big ideas. Each team is called a combatant. On the open expanse of contiguous courts, combatants are arrayed in positions corresponding to their location on the planet Earth as represented in the Rand McNally slightly rectangular hanging map of the world. Practical distribution of total megatonnage requires a working knowledge of the mean value theorem for integrals, but for Howe's synoptic purposes here, it's enough to say that megatonnage is distributed among combatants according to an integrally regressed ratio of A, combatants' yearly militant budget as percentage of combatants' yearly GNP, to B, the inverse of tactical expenditures as percentage of combatants' yearly military budget. In quainter days, combatants' balls were simply doled out by throws of shiny red Yahtzee dice. Quaint chance is no longer required because Pemulus has downloaded MathPack United Limited's elegant Instat stats cruncher software into the late James Incandenza's fearsome idle dropcloth DEC 2100 and has shown Otis P. Lord how to dicky the lock to Stitt's office at night with a dining room meal card and plug the DEC into a 3-prong that's under the lower left corner of the enormous print of Duer's The Magnificent Beast on the wall by the relevant edge of Stitt's big glass desk, so Stitt or DeLint won't even know it's on. And when it's on, then link it by cellular modem to a slick you portable with color monitor out on the court's nuclear theater. AMNAT and SOVWAR usually end up with about 400 total megatons each, with the rest inconsistently divided. It's possible to complicate Pemulus's mean value equation for distribution by factoring in stuff like historical incidences of bellicosity and appeasement, unique characteristics of perceived national interests, etc. But Lord, the son of not one but 2 bankers, is a straight bang-for-buck type of apportioner, a stance that equally bottom-line-minded Michael Pemulus endorses with both thumbs. Pieces of tennis gear are carefully placed within each combatant's territories to mirror and map strategic targets. Folded gray on red ETA t-shirts are MAMAs, major metro areas. Towels, stolen from selected motels on the junior tour, stand for airfields, bridges, satellite-linked monitoring facilities, carrier groups, conventional power plants, important rail convergences. Red tennis shorts with gray trim are CONFORCONs, conventional force concentrations. The black cotton ETA armbands, for when God forbid there's a death, designate the non-contemporary game era's atomic power plants, uranium, plutonium enrichment facilities, gaseous diffusion plants, breeder reactors, initiator factories, neutron scattering reflector labs, tritium production reactor vessels, heavy water plants, semi-private shape charge concerns, linear accelerators, and the especially point-heavy annular fusion research laboratories in North Syracuse, North New York, and Presque Isle, ME, Chayonsky, Kyrgyzstan, and Pliscu, Romania, and possibly elsewhere. Red shorts with gray trim, few in number because strongly disliked by the traveling squads, are SSTRACSs. Equally low number but point-intensive sites of strategic command. Socks are either missile installations or anti-missile installations or isolated silo clusters or cruise-capable B-2 or SS-5 squadrons. Let's draw the curtain of charity across any more MILABBREVs. Depending on whether They're boys' tennis socks or boys' street shoe socks or girls' tennis socks with the little bunny tail at the heel or girls' tennis socks without the bunny tail. Toe-worn, cast-off, corporate-supplied sneakers sit open-mouthed and serenely lethal, strongly suggesting the subs they stand for. In the game, combatants' 5 megaton warheads can be launched only with handheld tennis rackets. Hence, the requirement of actual physical targeting skill that separates Eschaton from rotisserie league Holocaust games played with protractors and PCs around kitchen tables. The paraboloid transcontinental flight of a liquid fuel strategic delivery vehicle closely resembles a top-spin lob. One reason the ETA administration and staff unofficially permit Eschaton to absorb students' attention and commitment might be that the game's devotees tend to develop terrific lobs. Pemulus's lobs can nail a coin on the baseline 2 out of 3 times off either side. It's why it's idiotic that he rushes the net so much instead of letting the other guy come in more. Warheads can be launched independently or packed into an intricately knotted athletic supporter designed to open out in mid-flight and release multiple independent re-entry vehicles, MIRVs. MIRVs being a profligate use of a combatant's available megatonnage, tend to get used only if a game of Eschaton metastasizes from a controlled set of spasm exchanges, SPASEX, to an all-out apocalyptic series of punishing strikes against civilian populations, SACPOP. Few combatants will go into SACPOP unless compelled by the remorseless logic of game theory. Since SACPOP exchanges usually end up costing both combatants so many points they're eliminated from further contention. A given Eschaton's winning team is simply that combatant with the most favorable ratio of points for INDDIR, infliction of death, destruction, and incapacitation of response, to SUFDDIR, self-evident, though the assignment of point values for each combatant's shirts, towels, shorts, armbands, socks, and shoes is statistically icky. Plus, there are also wildly involved corrections for initial megatonnage, population density, land, sea, air delivery distributions, and EM pulse resistant civil defense expenditures, so that the official victor takes 3 hours of N-stat number crunching and at least 4 Motrin for Otis P. Lord to confirm. Another reason why each year's master statistician has to be a special combination of tech-wonk and compulsive is that the Baroque apparatus of each Eschaton has to be worked out in advance and then sold to a kind of immature and easily bored community of world leaders. A quorum of the day's combatants has to endorse a particular simulated world situation, as lords stay up well past several bedtimes to develop it. Land, sea, air, force distributions, ethnic, sociologic, economic, and even religious demographics for each combatant, plus broadly sketched psych profiles of all relevant heads of state, prevailing weather in all maps, quadrants, etc. Then everybody playing that day is assigned to a combatant's team, and they all sit down over purified water and unfatted chips to hash out between combatants stuff like mutual defense alliances, humane war packs, facilities for intercombatants communication, DEFCON gradients, city trading, and so on. Since each combatant's team knows only their own situation profile and total available megatonnage, and since even out in the forecourt theater the stockpiled warheads are hidden from view inside the identical white plastic cast-off industrial solvent buckets all academies and serious players use for drill balls, there can be a lot of poker facing about response resolve, willingness to go SACPOP, non-negotiable interests, EM pulse immunity, distribution of strategic forces, and commitment to geopolitical ideals. You should have seen Michael Pemulus just about eat the whole world alive during a pre-Eschaton summits. Back when he played, his teams won most games before the first lob landed. What often takes the longest to get a quorum on is each game's triggering situation. Here, Lord, like many stellar statistic wonks, shows a bit of an Achilles heel imagination-wise. But he's got a good 5 or 6 years of Eschaton precedents to draw on. A Russo-Chinese border dispute goes tactical over Xinjiang. An AMNAT computractor in the Aleutians misreads a flight of geese as 3 SOVWAR-SS-10s on re-entry. Israel moves around armored divisions north and east through Jordan after an El Al Airbus is bombed in mid-flight by cell linked to both Hassins. Black Albertan wackos infiltrate an isolated silo at Fort Chimo and get 2 MIRVs through SOUTHAF's defense net. North Korea invades South Korea, vice versa. AMNAT is within 72 hours of putting an impregnable string of anti-missile satellites online, and the remorseless logic of game theory compels SOVWAR to go SACPOP while it still has the chance. On Interdependence Day, Sunday, 11/8, Game Master Lord's triggering situation unwinds nicely on Pemulus's view. Explosions of suspicious origin occur at AMNAT satellite receiver stations from Turkey to Labrador as 3 high-level Canadian defense ministers vanish, and then, a couple of days later, are photographed at a Volgograd bistro hoisting shots of Stolichnaya with Slavic bimbos on their knee. Then, 2 SOVWAR trawlers just inside international waters off Washington are strafed by F-16s on patrol out of Cape Flattery Naval Base. Both AMNAT and SOVWAR go from DEFCON 2 to DEFCON 4. Red Chi goes to DEFCON 3, in response to which SOVWAR airfields and anti-missile networks from Irkutsk to the Zugdar Range go to DEFCON 5, in response to which AMNAT SAC bombers and anti-missile missile silos in Nebraska and South Dakota and Saskatchewan and eastern Spain assume a maximum readiness posture. SOVWAR's bald and port wine-stained premier calls AMNAT's wattle-chinned president on the hotline and asks him if he's got Prince Albert in a can. Another pretty shady explosion levels a SOVWAR Big Ear monitoring station on Sakhalin. General Atomic Incorporation's gaseous diffusion uranium enrichment facility in Portsmouth, Ohio, reports 4 kilograms of enriched uranium hexafluoride missing, and then suffers a cataclysmic fire that forces evacuations of 6 downwind countries. An AMNAT minesweeper of the 6th Fleet on maneuvers in the Red Sea is hit and sunk with REDCHI Silkworm torpedoes fired by LIBSYR MiG-25s. Italy, in an apparent bizarre NSTAT-generated development Otis P. Lord will only smile enigmatically about, invades Albania. SOVWAR goes apeshit. Apoplectic premier rings AMNAT's president only to be asked if his refrigerator's running. LIBSYR shocks the Christian world by airbursting a half-megaton device 2 clicks over Tel Aviv, causing deaths in the low 6 figures. Everybody and his brother goes to DEFCON 5. Air Force One leaves the ground. SOTHAF and REDCHI announce neutrality and plead for cool heads. Israeli armored columns behind heavy tactical artillery saturation push into Syria all the way to Abu Kanal in 12 hours. Damascus has firearms. Inept is reportedly just plain gone. Several repressive right-wing regimes in the Third World suffer coups d'etats and are replaced by repressive left-wing regimes. Tehran and Baghdad announce full dip mill support of LIBSYR, thus reconstituting LIBSYR as IRLIBSYR. AMNAT and SOVWAR activate all civil defense personnel and armed forces reserves and commence evacuation of selected MAMAs. IRLIBSYR is today represented by Evan Ingersoll, whom Axford keeps growling at under his breath. Hal can hear. A shifty-eyed member of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff vanishes and isn't photographed anywhere. Albania sues for terms. Crude and apparently amateur devices in the low kiloton range explode across Israel from Haifa to Ashkelon. Tripoli is incommunicado after at least 4 thermonuclear explosions cause second-degree burns as far away as Medellin, Tunisia. A 10-kiloton tactical artillery device airbursts over the command central of the Czech Third Army in Ostrava, resulting in what one Pentagon analyst calls a serious weenie roast. Despite the fact that nobody but SOVWAR itself has anybody close enough to hit Ostrava from howitzer distance, SOVWAR stonewalls AMNAT's denials and regrets. AMNAT's president tries ringing SOVWAR's premier from the air and gets only the premier's answering machine. AMNAT is unable to determine whether the string of explosions at its radar installations all along the Arctic Circle are conventional or tactical. CIA NSA reports that 64% of the civilian populations of SOVWAR's MAMAs have been successfully relocated below ground in hardened shelters. AMNAT orders evacuation of all MAMAs. SOVWAR MiG-25s engage RED-CHI aircraft overseas over Tientsin. Air Force 2 tries to leave the ground and gets a flat tire. A single 1-megaton SS-10 evades anti-missile missiles and detonates just over Provo, Utah, from which all communications abruptly cease. Eschaton's game master now posits, but does not go so far as to actually assert, that NSTAT's game-theoretic decision tree now dictates an SPASEX response from AMNAT.